Hi, welcome home. Darrell here. Today I wanted to share with you one of my favorite instruments, the Autoharp, and I wanted to share with you my thoughts on why I think you might want one. So I'll be playing a few samples here for you. At first I wanted to let you know my history with this instrument. I haven't been playing for very long, only about a year or so, but I do like to adventure and explore, so I've been taking this thing with me as I road trip and explore old gold mining towns and mountain pioneer towns, and I like to hang out in saloons and strum out some songs. And this has proven to be an instrument that people tend to really enjoy hearing. And what's so great about this instrument is that it covers such a broad range, so it makes a great accompaniment instrument, but it's quite clear, so it's easy for people to sing along to this. So if you are able to gauge your audience and you can figure out what sort of songs people around you want to hear, if you're hanging out at a restaurant or a saloon, you can figure out what sort of music your audience wants to sing along to. This instrument has been really great for that. So I've taken this thing on so many adventures around the place over the past, I've had this thing for about 6 months. And I had another auto harp that had 15 chords. This one has 21 chords. So I think that possibly many people out there would really enjoy playing one of these if they really knew what it was all about. There tends to be a negative stigma that these aren't real instruments, which stems from far back from musicians that say, oh, well, you just push a chord, you push a button and that forms the chord for you. And it's so easy that it doesn't count as a real instrument. That's a sentiment that is quite false, because there's a lot more that goes into the technique of just pushing the buttons. You don't just, use your meat hammers here and just hit the chords. You have to be really careful in the way that you push the chords in order to not generate this mechanical sound. There's a very specific technique to holding the instrument, because it's very easy to mute the resonating surface on the back if you aren't holding it correctly. And because you don't need to invest so much of your attention to the formation of the chords, that means that you can perform much more elaborate and intricate patterns with your picking hand. So there's so much you can do with this instrument. It makes a great accompaniment instrument if you are just singing and you want to play some chords to back yourself, or if you are playing with other musicians. I tend to take this to pubs to play with various Irish music clubs. I take this to country music clubs and play country music and old-time folk music. I've taken this to bluegrass festivals, and I've played breaks in groups of about between 30 and 40 people. And there's enough volume in here to keep up with everyone else, but you can play a break loudly enough to where it can be heard. So there is this sort of attitude and stigma that you only play chords and you don't really, hear melodies, or you can't hear anything interesting or intricate, which shocked a lot of people when I played at a bluegrass festival a couple of months ago, when I was sort of playing a break in melodies, and people thought, oh, well, okay, that's pretty neat then. So I'll just play a little sample here, and if you can sort of detect what song I'm playing here, I'm playing the intro to, please feel free to comment. Yeah, it's just the opening riff. I'll play something else here. So you can mute the strings by just picking chords that all sort of clash together. I pick F, C, and G. Tap those down, you can mute your strings. So I'll play another sample here, and if you can figure out what song it is, then please feel free to comment. But the whole point is that you can identify the music. You can play intricately enough with enough ornamentation and definition, so it's not just chords that you're hearing. You can play this and hear music, not just chords. So. you can detect what that song was, please feel free to comment that. So there's just a sample of what the instrument sounds like, what it can do in terms of ornamentation and definition in your music. There's a lot that you can do, but in general, if you're playing on your own, you'll have typical strumming patterns. Something that if you are accustomed to playing guitar or other strumming instruments, something you'll have to get accustomed to is you can't upstroke on your thumb, or that will actually just rip your thumb pick out. So I use 3 thumb picks here. In the past I've used all plastic, but I'm using metal on my middle finger now, because my middle finger is what reaches up to the highest strings, and that just gets a bit more sparkle. Whereas I use plastic on the lower 2 for a softer attack. Otherwise it can get quite clattery and jangly, especially in recordings. If you're using metal, especially with recordings, it can get jangly and clattery. So just to show you the chords that are available on this guy, you can customize the chords as well if there's something you need. I have a feeling my camera may be mirroring these. So this is an instrument that is easy to hear in a variety of environments. As I've mentioned before, I've hung out in dusty old saloons, hung out in the desert, way up in the mountains, and where I've played this, it always seems to put a smile on people's faces, and you can play a song clearly enough to where people hear it and they'll sing along. And you know, I've hung out in old gold mining towns until late at night just by lantern light with a bunch of strangers, people I don't even know, and we're all just singing songs. We've never met each other before, hanging out by lantern light in the old Wild West, and we're just singing songs together. And this was the instrument that I had with me at the time. I like hanging out and with my Irish music clubs in the pubs, and I'll play some, you know, traditional old songs, and then people love to sing along. And even in environments like a pub, this thing has enough projection and presence, and it's quite clear, so you can even hear it over, you know, the general noise of a pub. So it's mostly a challenge when you're first starting out to remember where all of the chords are. And once all of the chords, you've sort of figured out where your chords are, it's a matter of learning your strumming patterns, because you're not just strumming. There are specific zones in which you know where you have an idea of where the strings are that you need to strike. If you have a look in there, it's actually felt. And as you push down on a button, it bar comes down, and the felt mutes the strings that you don't need. So in general, you mostly know where the strings are that you need to strike. You have your bass strings there, your treble strings up there. So I will be creating a video that will serve as a guide for a starting point. So if you want to start playing auto harp, then I will create a series of videos that help you get started to figure out what you actually just physically need to do to really use this as an accompaniment instrument, and as if you're playing with an ensemble, if you're with 1, 2, 3 other musicians or a room full of other musicians, what sort of role this can play. Because this isn't like a mandolin where we know, oh, okay, you play on, you know, oh, maybe you play on 2 and 4, you do this, you play lead, you play counterpoint, you know. It's not like a bass where you say, oh, you play on 1 and 3, you can do this, you do that. These instruments are not really widely used, so there isn't really a well-established rule on what role this plays in. And so I've really just had to feel my way around and figure out how to fit in with other musicians. And it's quite different. You don't play the same when you're playing alone. Obviously, you need to fill the sound space, your canvas of sound. You don't play the same when you're with other musicians as well. If you are backing other musicians, you can play on 1s and 3s. Something to that effect. So I hope this has been interesting for you, and keep a lookout. You can often find these on eBay. You'll find them in pawn shops. You can find them brand new, but they're quite expensive. And if you just want to try them and see if they might work out for you, then I would recommend checking auction sites like eBay or checking pawn shops. I've generally picked them up from eBay without any issues, because you'll generally find people have these and maybe don't want them anymore. And you'll have to be careful. There are buying guides on what sort of auto harp to pick up, because if you get very old ones, or if the strings are in bad condition, if the felt is in bad condition, it's going to be very expensive to replace all those things, and then you've just wasted money. So please look up guides on buying auto harps. People have already created articles and videos that can explain it better than I would anyway. But I would like to create a video on how to get started playing the auto harp. So I'll do that at some point in the future. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you've liked hearing a bit of a sampling of the auto harp. So take care of yourselves, and I hope that you'll check one out, because they're a lot of fun, and musicians that I play with, they always get a kick out of hearing this thing, and it really complements other instruments well, especially in old-timey music and in folk music. It just blends so well with other instruments.